The most bizarre murder case you've never heard of. Despite the fact that it has not been solved as of yet, the murder of Jeanette Dolma continues to be one of the most puzzling and tragic occurrences that has taken place in recent times. Despite the fact that Jeanette Dolma was a young lady who had a promising future ahead of her, her life was cut short due to circumstances that were both cruel and inexplicable. Her life was cut short. A vast number of questions have not been answered, and the community is in a state of sorrow as a result of her case, which has attracted the interest of the general public as well as organizations that deal with law enforcement. Her story has also captured the attention of organizations that deal with law enforcement. A college student named Jeanette Dolma, who was 23 years old at the time, was well known for her vivacious attitude as well as her dedication to her studies. It was well known that she possessed both of these qualities. She was working toward a degree in sociology, with the goal of becoming a social worker so that she could offer aid to communities that were not being treated in an appropriate manner. Her goal was to become a helping hand to those communities. Those who knew her and those who were close to her characterized her as a compassionate and determined individual who was always willing to provide a helping hand to those who would benefit from assistance. Her willingness to help others who were in need of assistance remained consistent throughout her life. It was a tragic incident that her promising future was devastated when she was discovered dead in her house on the evening of September 12, 2010. Her life had been cut short. Her passing caused a great deal of sorrow. As Jeanette's roommate arrived home on that awful day, she was able to witness the horrifying scene that had been taking place in front of her. The dead body of Jeanette was discovered in her bedroom, and it was obvious that she had been the victim of a severe assault just before her death. She had been the victim of a serious assault throughout the incident. Furthermore, the particulars of the murder scene were not only distressing, but they were also perplexing to the person who was observing them. As a result of the fact that she had sustained a number of knife wounds and that there were indications of violence against her, there was proof that Jeanette had battled ferociously for her life. This was evidenced by the fact that she had fought for her life. The conclusion that the perpetrator of the assault had a personal motivation for carrying out the attack was reached by the investigators after they conducted their investigation. The gravity of the assault was taken into consideration when making this conclusion. Nevertheless, in spite of the fact that there seemed to be evidence of a struggle, there were no indications that the flat had been entered from the outside. As a result of this, the detectives began to make the premise that Jeanette might have been familiar with the individual who assaulted her and had voluntarily allowed them to enter her apartment. This was another reason why they began to make this judgment. This theory, on the other hand, is made significantly more complicated than it already was due to the fact that Jeanette was well-liked and did not have any known competitors. The inquiry was placed in a precarious position from the very beginning, so that it may be challenging to pursue. This was due to the fact that there was no obvious suspect to begin with the investigation. During the course of the investigation, law enforcement authorities conducted a substantial number of interviews with people who were familiar with Jeanette. These persons included her friends, members of her family, and acquaintances. They continued to conduct an inquiry into her personal life in order to find any evidence that would throw light on the identity of the person who could have carried out such a horrible crime. They were hoping to figure out who the perpetrator of such a heinous attack may be. They did a large amount of work, but they were not successful in obtaining any big leads. Despite this, they were able to find some leads. Throughout the course of the investigation, additional difficulties were encountered as a consequence of the absence of tangible evidence, such as fingerprints or DNA testing. Forensic investigators had a difficult time piecing together the events that took place that night because the perpetrator had been able to leave behind very little to no sign of their earlier actions. This made it difficult for them to piece together the events that took place. In the course of the investigation, one of the factors that proved to be the most perplexing was the fact that there was no straightforward explanation for the criminal act. January did not have a history of being involved in criminal activities, and she also did not have any known arguments or conflicts with any other individuals. Neither of these things were known to have occurred. The occurrence of neither of these items was known to have taken place. Due to the fact that her life appeared to be relatively free of drama, she was even more surprised by the severity of the assault. The assault became far more difficult for her to comprehend as a result of this. As a result of the random nature of the crime, there was a widespread sense of fear and anxiety throughout the entire community. Many people were curious about whether or not the culprit might carry out another attack in the future. With the passage of time, the investigation into the murder of Jeanette Dolma became increasingly sluggish and uninteresting. The fact that law enforcement agents resumed their efforts and conducted periodic inspections did not result in the finding of any new evidence, despite the fact that they accomplished both of those things. Although the case was never solved, Jeanette's family never stopped looking for answers and seeking justice for their cherished daughter and sister. They never stopped asking that justice be served. They were never satisfied with their search for answers, in the hope that someone somewhere would come forward with knowledge that may completely dispel the mystery surrounding her disappearance. Tributes and vigils were arranged in her honor. This was done with the purpose of preserving her memory and making certain that her legacy would continue on after she had passed away. As a result of the absence of actual leads, numerous ideas and speculations have been developed throughout the course of the years. This might be attributed to the fact that there are no actual leads. Several people are of the opinion that Jeanette's death was the result of a random act of violence, which may have been carried out by a transient person who had no link to her personal life. This is the opinion of a number of people. This viewpoint is held by a certain segment of the general public. Several people are of the opinion that the person who committed the murder was a member of her social circle who was trying to hide a deep-seated resentment or a dark secret. This is the opinion of a number of people. Given the degree of cruelty that was involved, there are even some people who are of the opinion that the occurrence may have been carried out by a person who has a history of committing crimes. This is because of the brutality that was involved. The murder of Jeanette Dolma, which has not been solved, continues to be a bleeding wound for both her family and the community, despite the fact that several theories have been offered. The murder has not been solved. It serves as a sobering reminder of the precarious aspect of life and the unyielding pursuit of justice in the face of immense obstacles, both of which are brought to mind by the circumstances that surround her case. The legacy that Jeanette leaves behind is a story that continues to plague people who knew her, and her story continues to haunt those who knew her. In light of the fact that this case has given rise to a great deal of questions that have not been answered, this is a sorrowful cry for answers. Would you like it? Hit the like button and subscribe to our channels for more interesting and informative videos.